It was hotter than usual that day. One of those midsummer afternoons where the sky looks like it's been scrubbed raw and the heat radiates off the pavement like it's trying to prove something. I got off work early, last-minute schedule change, and I figured I'd beat traffic, grab a cold drink from the fridge, and maybe crash on the couch for a bit. No grand plans, just silence and AC. That's all I wanted. Kristen's car was in the driveway when I pulled in, which threw me off. She usually didn't get home until 5 or 6. Sometimes later if she stopped at that yoga studio or hit one of those coffee shops she always claimed helped her reset. But there it was, parked, dusty, and tilted a little too close to the hedge like she'd rushed it. I remember walking up the porch steps and noticing the weirdest thing. The house felt still. Not just quiet, still. Like the kind of still that sits in the pit of your stomach before something drops. There were no sounds. No running water. No music playing from her Bluetooth speaker, which was normally her go-to. No hum from the dishwasher or the laundry or the TV. Just stillness. Like the house was holding its breath. At first, I figured maybe she was napping upstairs. She'd done that a lot lately. Said she was exhausted, mentally drained, emotionally cluttered. Whatever that meant. I didn't want to wake her if that was the case. But something pulled me past the stairs anyway. Halfway up, I heard something. It wasn't music. Not the TV. Laughter. A man's laughter. Light, flirtatious, and coming from the direction of the bathroom. I froze. Not in a dramatic movie scene way. Just still. Like my body didn't know what to do with itself. I listened. It happened again. That same kind of laughter. Not loud enough to be casual. Not quiet enough to ignore. That bathroom was just a few feet away from our bedroom. No reason for anyone to be in there, especially with the door half shut like someone forgot their own privacy. And that's when I saw it. Kristen, standing barefoot on the cold tile floor, wearing nothing but my old college button-down, the one she used to steal from the hamper because she said it smelled like me. Her hair was up in a messy bun. One leg crossed in front of the other like she was posing without realizing it. Her phone was tilted just enough for me to see the screen. There was a man on the other end of the call. Shirtless. 10. Probably mid-30s. He was lying back against some pillows, laughing as he blew her a kiss through the camera. And Kristen? She was giggling, her thumb hovering like she'd just taken a screech *T or was about to. There was something about her body language, too. Relaxed. Comfortable. Familiar. She hadn't seen me yet. Not until I exhaled. Not until the wood floor creaked ever so slightly beneath my foot. She startled just a little, like a kid caught playing with matches. Then her whole face changed. Eyes wide. Then blinking into that strange calm. Her hand moved in one smooth motion, ending the call like she was swiping away a boring email. And then she looked at me. "Oh," she said. Just that. Like I was the one barging in on something unimportant. "Hey, didn't hear you come in." My eyes stayed locked on the screen, now black. "Who was that?" I asked because it was the only thing I could get out. She glanced at the phone, then back at me, her voice light, unbothered. "That? Oh, Nick. Just being dumb. He's one of the guys from the yoga studio. We were joking around. He's hilarious." She smiled as she said it, like that would help me forget what I'd just seen. I didn't speak. Not because I didn't want to, but because my brain couldn't seem to bridge the gap between what was happening and what was being said. Like reality had forked into two directions and I was stuck in the space between. She kept going, voice so casual it felt rehearsed. "It's not what it looked like. He's just like that. Always blowing kisses, acting silly. Honestly, it's harmless." I wanted to ask her why she looked so comfortable. Why she was wearing my shirt and nothing else. Why she looked like she'd just stepped out of a long bath and into someone else's world. But I couldn't ask. Because somewhere inside me, I already knew the answers. And asking would have meant hearing them. So I nodded. Just once. Then I turned around and walked back down the stairs, hand brushing the banister like I was trying to stay tethered to something. Anything. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. She came downstairs 10 minutes later like nothing had happened. Asked if I wanted lemonade. Said she might order Thai food later. Told me about a podcast she'd listened to about relationships and how people are too dependent on labeling every emotion. I stared at her the whole time, but I don't think she noticed. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. She called it nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the start of something unraveling. Something that had probably been coming for a while, but now it had a face, a voice, and a shirtless guy named Nick on the other end of a FaceTime call. That night, when I laid in bed beside her, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry, not yet, but because I realized something had cracked. Not loudly, not in a dramatic explosion, just a thin, near-invisible fracture, like the kind that spreads across glass in slow motion. A fracture that starts at the edge and works its way toward the center, silent but inevitable. And no matter how much she smiled or poured wine, or asked what movie I wanted to watch, I couldn't unsee what I saw. She called it nothing. But for me, it was the beginning of the end. After that day in the bathroom, everything looked different. Or maybe it had always looked that way and I was just finally allowing myself to see it. First, I tried to move past it. Tried to convince myself that maybe it really was nothing. Some inside joke, some exaggerated moment, something I'd misread. But the problem wasn't just what I saw. It was how quickly she brushed it off. How comfortable she was slipping back into normal like nothing had shifted. And how, in contrast, everything felt shifted for me. It wasn't just Nick. It was the little things that started lining up in my head like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Her phone, for one. It had started living in her back pocket or flipped face down on the kitchen island. Notifications didn't stay on the screen anymore. They just blinked once and vanished, like secrets learning how to stay quiet. And her passwords, those had changed too. We used to know each other's codes, no questions asked. But suddenly, the one I used to know didn't work. When I asked about it, she shrugged. Said something about a system update. Said, "Oh, I meant to give it to you again." But never did. She started waking up earlier than usual. Like before sunrise. I'd hear her moving around downstairs, sometimes slipping out the door without even turning on the lights. She said she was going for walks. Said it helped her clear her head. I believed her the first couple of times. But after a while, it didn't feel like self-care. Felt like avoidance. And then there was the lingerie. It showed up in the laundry one evening while I was sorting through the dryer. I remember pulling out a sheer black piece that I had definitely never seen before. Not something she'd wear for me. Not anymore. She hadn't worn that kind of thing around me in a long time. And if I asked about it now, I knew what she'd say. "It's for me, not you. I just wanted to feel good." Another nothing. Another ghost of an explanation. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I just watched. The shoes were next. A pair of white sneakers I hadn't seen before showed up by the front door one morning. They weren't her usual brand. The ones she always said didn't support her arches. I asked about them, and she smiled like it was an inside joke I wasn't part of. "Oh, those? Just a gift. From a client." Then she changed the subject. I think what made it worse was how ordinary she tried to keep everything. She still asked what I wanted for dinner. Still played music while she cooked. Still kissed my cheek like clockwork every morning before she left for work. But the kisses didn't land. Her body would turn before her lips even reached my skin. Like she was already somewhere else. I didn't want to be paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who snoops, who checks devices, who builds stories out of nothing. But it was getting harder to ignore the story she was writing right in front of me. Then one afternoon, while organizing files on my desktop, I noticed something. Folder. It had synced from her old cloud account. We had shared storage set up years ago for trip photos and receipts and dumb memes we sent each other. But she rarely used it anymore. At least that's what I thought. The folder was called July or Upstate. That threw me because as far as I knew, we hadn't taken any trips in July. I clicked it open, half expecting pictures of trees or yoga retreats or something from that phase she had where she wanted to live in the woods for a weekend. But it wasn't trees. It was her. Kristen, barefoot, leaning in the doorway of a cottage I didn't recognize. Her hair was damp, curled slightly at the ends like it always did when it air-dried. She was wearing a tank top and cut-off shorts. Smiling. A genuine, relaxed, almost effortless smile. The kind she hadn't smiled at me in months. And next to her, with his arm casually draped around her waist, was a man I'd never seen before. Bearded, sunburned shoulders, t-shirt inside out like he'd thrown it on in a hurry. They were both barefoot. There was a bottle of wine resting near his foot, and Kristen's hand was holding a phone, clearly taking a selfie of the two of them. There were 8 photos in total. In one, they were walking along the lake holding hands. In another, he had his hand in her back pocket. In another, she was sitting on the hood of his car, laughing so hard her head was tilted back, like she didn't have a care in the world. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was disbelief. Not anger, not grief, just that quiet, numbing disbelief that wraps around you like a weighted blanket and makes it hard to move. She had a whole life I didn't know about, a whole mood, a whole version of herself that didn't include me. And the worst part? She looked happy in it. I didn't know who he was. I didn't recognize the location. But I knew, deep down, that she hadn't just drifted. She had left. She'd just forgotten to take her body with her. The more I sat with it, the more I started rewinding time in my head. The business trip she took in June, the one that got extended because of last-minute meetings. The unreadable look on her face when she came home. The way she kept her suitcase closed and washed her clothes at the laundromat instead of at home. Or the night she said she was visiting her sister who needed support. And I offered to drive her, but she said no, said it would be too emotional, that she needed to go alone. Even her playlists had changed. She used to listen to indie folk, acoustic stuff. Now it was synth pop and road trip playlists. I'd hear her humming sometimes while folding laundry. She used to hum when she was falling in love with me. Now she was humming someone else's songs. One night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Kristen scrolled on her phone next to me. I glanced over. The screen was angled just out of view. I saw the edge of a photo, maybe a beach, maybe not. She noticed me looking, locked the phone, and smiled. "Everything okay?" she asked, voice sugar-sweet. I nodded. "Just tired." She kissed my cheek. "Don't stay up too late." She turned off her lamp and rolled over. And I just stared into the dark, heart pounding, every puzzle piece snapping into place, one by one. It was a Sunday morning when I stopped lying to myself. She said she needed to run out. Vitamins, a new phone charger, maybe a smoothie if the line wasn't too long. Her tone was casual. Her hair was tied back in one of those effortless buns she wore when she wanted to seem low maintenance. She had on a faded t-shirt, leggings, no makeup. It was the kind of look that used to make me feel like I was home. Now it felt like camouflage. I watched from the kitchen window as she backed out of the driveway, sunlight flashing off the windshield. I waited 30 seconds. Then I started moving. I'd already rehearsed this moment in my head more times than I cared to admit. The week before, after finding those photos in the synced cloud folder, I'd bought a discreet security camera, one that looked like a decorative bookend. I placed it on the shelf in the living room, angled just right to capture the front door, the couch, the hallway. It had a motion sensor, night vision, and most importantly, cloud backup. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she never mentioned it. Now, with the house empty and quiet, I opened my laptop and pulled up the footage. The first couple days were nothing. She came home, made tea, scrolled on her phone, watched Netflix. She had a habit of wrapping herself in the throw blanket and letting it drag on the floor when she walked. I used to find it endearing. But then came Wednesday afternoon. She was supposed to be working late that day. Instead, I watched her unlock the front door at 2:43 p.m. and step inside, followed by a man. He didn't knock. He used a key. Tall, dark jacket, athletic build. The camera caught enough of his face to recognize him if I saw him again. But I didn't know him. I had no name, no backstory, just this. He walked into my house like he lived there. Kristen smiled as she took his coat. She kissed him. Not on the cheek, not a friend's greeting, but something deeper, slower. They moved to the kitchen. She poured wine. He leaned in close. They talked, laughing, whispering. She ran her fingers through his hair. Then they disappeared down the hallway toward the bedroom. My bedroom. The video skipped ahead. Minutes passed. Then over an hour. When they returned, Kristen was barefoot, wearing the same robe she used to wear on Sundays when we'd make pancakes together. He was holding her mug. My mug. The one that said, "Yours forever" on the side. Ironically, a Valentine's Day gift from her, back when forever still felt real. He put his feet on the coffee table. She curled up next to him. They looked like a couple. Not in some torrid, passionate way, but in the way two people fall into a rhythm when they've done this before. This wasn't new. This wasn't reckless. This was rehearsed. She walked him out at 4:12 p.m. He kissed her hand before stepping outside. She watched him leave, waited a few seconds, then turned off the lights like she was resetting the scene, wiping the slate clean. I stared at the screen, my hands gripping the edges of the laptop. So many emotions crashed into each other at once. Shock, rage, grief, but underneath it all was clarity. It was no longer a question of if. This was the answer, plain as day, unfiltered, undeniable. I could have confronted her right then, texted her a still from the footage, demanded the truth. But what would that change? She'd deny, twist, cry, explain. I'd already heard enough explanations. I was done with explanations. So I made a list instead. I wrote down what needed to happen. Change the locks, pack her things, print the documents, leave nothing open to interpretation. I started with the locks. It only took 20 minutes. I had already bought the hardware, already watched the YouTube tutorial. I removed the bell camera too. Didn't want her thinking she could keep watching the house like she owned it. Then I moved to her stuff. I grabbed her bags, the ones she used for yoga and weekend getaways. I filled them with clothes from the dresser. Her makeup bag, her books, the shampoo she liked that made the bathroom smell like lavender and betrayal. Everything went into a large cardboard box that I labeled with her name and a single word, return. I didn't include a note. Instead, I printed the screensh *TS. The ones from the cloud folder. The ones from the security footage. I put them in a thin file along with receipts I'd pulled from our joint account. One from a lakefront Airbnb, one from a boutique hotel downtown, both paid for with money from our shared savings. At the top of the file, I placed a clean, uncreased manila envelope containing the divorce petition. Signed, dated, finalized. She would find it all on the front porch. When I finished, I set the box outside, right next to the welcome mat, the same one she bought on Etsy that said, "Good vibes only." Then I sat on the couch and waited. It was just after noon when I saw her car turning onto the street. I didn't move. She parked, coffee in one hand, a paper bag in the other, probably from that health store she liked. She climbed the steps, humming to herself. Then she reached for the door. It didn't open. I watched from the window as confusion slid across her face. She tried again, knocked, looked around. That's when she noticed the box. She crouched down, opened it. At first, she rifled through it like it was someone else's Amazon delivery. Then her hand paused. The photos, the receipts, the envelope. I couldn't hear her, but I could see her mouth form my name. She stood there for a while, knocked again, this time louder. Then she texted me. 3 messages. "Hey, what is this? Can you please come outside? Edward, we need to talk." I didn't respond. I sat on the couch, hands folded in my lap, listening to the ticking of the wall clock and the dull throb in my chest. Eventually, she stopped knocking. She looked at the door one last time, then picked up the box, walked back to her car, pulled out of the driveway, and just like that, she was gone. For the first time since it all began, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel wrecked. I felt done. And somehow that was enough. The strangest part was how quiet everything felt after she left the porch. Not peaceful. Not yet. Just still. A kind of stillness that usually only comes after a storm. When the trees stop swaying and the air feels thick with the memory of everything that's just passed through. I watched her car disappear down the street, the box resting awkwardly in her passenger seat like some twisted care package. A lifetime of receipts and proof and pieces of the truth she thought I'd never find. Her phone buzzed my pocket 3 times. I didn't check it. I already knew what the messages would say, Pleading, confused, maybe even a little indignant. She was always good at pretending not to understand what she'd done wrong. But this time, I wasn't going to give her the script. I turned off my phone, sat back down on the couch, and let the silence stretch. She didn't come back that night. I don't know where she went. And honestly, I didn't care. Maybe to his place. Maybe a hotel. Maybe just circling the block trying to figure out how I'd gotten ahead of her. But wherever she was, it wasn't here. Not anymore. The next morning, I changed the Wi-Fi password, logged her out of the streaming accounts, updated the banking credentials. Every shared thing, every digital thread that connected her to my life was methodically cut, one by one. I spent the day cleaning, not because I needed to, but because I wanted her gone in more ways than just physically. I stripped the bed, threw out the shampoo, replaced the kitchen towels, put on music I knew she hated, the kind she called depressing, but I always found grounding. By mid-afternoon, I'd reached the closet. Her clothes were already packed, but her presence lingered in the smallest things. A forgotten ring box tucked behind an old shoebox, a post-it with a grocery list in her handwriting. Her perfume still clung to the edges of the air like it refused to believe she'd actually left. I opened the windows, let the summer air flood in and sweep her scent out. That night, I slept like a stone. 2 days later, she came back. Not to knock, not to talk, but to trespass. She didn't use the front door this time. She slipped through the side gate, the one that always creaked but never quite latched right, and let herself in like it was still her home. I heard the back door open, heard the soft thud of her bag hitting the kitchen floor. She didn't call out my name, didn't announce her presence, just moved around like nothing had changed. When I walked into the living room, she was already in my chair. Not our chair, my chair. The one spot in the house that was truly mine. She was curled into it like she used to, sipping a glass of wine, my wine, that I had been saving for something quiet and simple and good. She looked up at me like this was a casual Tuesday. "Hey," she said, like I was late coming home from work. "I thought we should talk." I didn't say anything. She gestured at the room. "You changed the curtains. That's new." I just stood there. She sighed, setting the glass down. "Look, Edward, I know you're angry. I get it. But can we please be adults about this?" That word, adults, almost made me laugh. As if slipping through a side gate and squatting in someone else's house was mature problem-solving. I finally spoke. "You need to leave." She blinked, like she wasn't expecting me to speak so plainly. I wanted to explain," she said. "Everything's gotten so twisted. That footage, the photos, you're seeing it out of context." I tilted my head. "There's a context where you bring a man into our house, pour him wine, sleep in our bed, and that makes sense?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She stood, arms crossed now, switching gears. "This isn't just on me," she said, voice tightening. "We've both been distant. You've been so checked out. I didn't know how to reach you anymore." There it was, the pivot, the push to make it mutual. I didn't bite. "Leave," I said again. She moved toward me like she might touch my arm, then stopped. "This is still my house too," she said. "You can't just lock me out." "Actually," I said, pulling the folded paper from my back pocket, "I can." I handed her the updated ownership documents, notarized and filed with the lawyer I'd met the day after the footage surfaced. I'd bought her out of the mortgage with my share of our joint savings. She hadn't even noticed it was gone yet. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the page. "You went behind my back," she whispered. I looked her dead in the eyes. "So did you." She stood there for a long time, the kind of long where people start questioning their next move. And then, just like that, the mask slipped. Her face hardened. "You always need control," she said. "This is you trying to punish me." "No," I said, stepping aside so she had a clear path to the door. "This is me reclaiming peace." She grabbed her bag, muttering something I didn't catch. Maybe an insult, maybe regret, maybe both. When the door clicked shut behind her, it didn't feel dramatic. Felt clean. But that wasn't the end. Later that week, An anonymous email showed up at my job. The subject line was innocuous, but inside was a carefully worded accusation. Something vague enough to raise questions, something twisted just enough to be dangerous. A quote from a years-old conversation Kristen and I had during a rough patch. She'd recorded it. I recognized my own words immediately, but the context had been cut away, reshaped to imply I was emotionally manipulative. It was the kind of thing that, to the untrained eye, could be damning. HR called me in. They were polite, professional. I explained. I told the truth. I showed them the petition, the timeline, the context. And thank God, they believed me. But still, it rattled me. Not because I was in danger of losing my job, but because I hadn't expected her to go that far. She was unraveling. Over the next few days, more messages came in. A few social media accounts I didn't recognize started following me, commenting vague things on my posts. I'd blocked them all. Took **TS. My lawyer added them to the file. It didn't last long. Once she realized her tactics weren't working, she stopped. Or maybe she just got tired. Or maybe someone, her new Nick, or whoever he was, saw the side of her that I had finally learned to stop excusing. Either way, the noise faded. And for the first time in weeks, my house was mine again. No side doors creaking open. No footsteps that didn't belong. No wine glasses left out like reminders of betrayal. Just me. And the quiet. The thing about people like Kristen is that they don't understand what it means to lose. Not really. They think loss is just a phase, a rough patch, a low point in a story that eventually arcs back in their favor. But not this time. Not in this version of the story. A few days after I shut the door on her, figuratively and literally, she came back. Not through the front door this time. That had been shut to her permanently. And not through the side gate either. She came in with a locksmith. It happened on a Wednesday while I was at work. My neighbor texted me, "Hey man, just saw Kristen and some guy messing with your door. Everything okay?" I didn't respond right away. I called the police instead. By the time I got home, she was gone. But the locks were scratched, the welcome mat was flipped, and the camera I'd reinstalled, this time hidden in the porch light, had captured everything. She hadn't said much on the footage. Just told the guy, "It's my house, I just lost my key." I filed a report. Nothing serious, just documentation. But I emailed her a copy. She didn't reply. But 2 days later, I got an email from someone named Truth Seeker 2025 with a subject line that read, "The Edward you don't know." Inside was a copy-paste dump of old text messages, mine, and audio clips from private conversations between us. She must have recorded them without me knowing. They were edited, of course, cropped and rearranged to sound like I was cold, manipulative, maybe even controlling. The emails were sent to my company's general inbox, my boss, and even one of our clients. I found out because IT flagged the messages and called me in. Again, I explained everything. Walked them through the timeline, showed the legal documents, and offered to have my lawyer reach out if necessary. It wasn't even close. They believed me. They'd seen situations like this before. People spiraling, twisting the narrative when the real story didn't go their way. Still, I took it seriously. Had to. One wrong assumption and I could have lost everything. So I locked things down even further. Passwords, firewalls, socials wiped clean. I removed photos of us from old albums, backed them up, then deleted them from every synced cloud we'd ever shared. It wasn't just damage control anymore. It was deletion. Kristen didn't stop, though. When she realized the work angle didn't stick, she shifted tactics. She called mutual friends, what few we still had, and spun her version of the story. I heard through the grapevine that she told them I'd forced her out, cut her off, frozen our accounts, turned cold after months of emotional distance. One even texted me to say, "I don't know what really happened, but Kristen's really hurting. Are you sure you're okay?" I didn't even bother answering. Not out of pride, just fatigue. At some point, you stop trying to fix other people's misunderstandings. You just let them decide which version of the story they want to believe. What Kristen didn't know, or maybe refused to believe, was that I had already moved faster than she could. The house? Legally transferred. The finances? Untangled. The lawyer? Already handling everything with a paper trail so thick it could choke a fire. The divorce papers? Submitted. Processing. Final. There was nothing left for her to undo. But still, she tried. She came by one afternoon when she thought I wouldn't be home. I was in the backyard, trimming the hedges. Took her a minute to realize I was there. She stopped halfway up the walkway, carrying something in her hands. A gift bag. Pastel colors. Tissue paper poking out of the top. I didn't say anything. She hesitated, then forced a smile. "Hey," she said, lifting the bag slightly. "I got you something." I stared. "It's just," she continued. "I saw it and thought of you. I know things are tense, but maybe we could." "No." That was all I said. Her smile faltered. She set the bag on the ground slowly, as if placing it at a gravesite. "Edward," she tried again. "We don't have to be enemies." I gave a small nod. "You're right, we don't. But we also don't have to be anything." Her face shifted. Hurt, frustration. Then that all-too-familiar flicker of blame. "You're acting like I'm the only one who made mistakes," she said. "Do you know how hard it's been for me?" I tilted my head. "No, I don't. Because you never let me see anything real until it was too late." She looked like she wanted to yell. Or cry. Or both. But instead, she picked up the gift bag, turned, and walked back to her car. She didn't come back after that. Not physically, anyway. But the emails kept coming for another week or two. At first, they were rational. Then poetic. Then emotional. And finally, angry. The last one simply said, "You threw away something beautiful." I didn't reply, because by then, I had stopped confusing what we were with what we pretended to be. The truth was, I'd been fighting for something long after she stopped showing up for it. I was trying to protect something that had already died. And all her scrambling, her dramatics, her half-hearted attempts to *p***nize the past. They weren't about love. They were about control. About fear. And once I stopped giving her that power, there was nothing left for her to hold on to. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw that her old mug, the Good Morning Sunshine one, was still in the back of the cabinet. I took it out, looked at it for a second, then dropped it into the trash without a word. It hit the bottom with a soft crack. Later, I ran a load of laundry, threw in the couch blanket she used to steal, washed the scent out of it, then folded it, set it on a shelf, and forgot it. I didn't burn anything, didn't smash plates or delete every memory. I just stopped giving her space in places she no longer belonged. And slowly, the house felt like mine again. Each day got quieter. Not in a hollow way, in a calm way. She tried to rewrite the ending. But by the time she picked up the pen, I'd already turned the page.